All right, let's get into it. When a safety incident happens on a job site, what really happens next? It's not just about filling out forms. Nope. It's basically a full-blown detective story. The mission isn't just to figure out what happened, but to dig down deep and find the real why, so it never ever happens again. So today, we're going to crack open the Safety Detective's Playbook. And you can think of it like this. Every single safety plan, every procedure, it's a promise. It's a promise from a company to its people that they'll get home safe. What we're looking at today is the exact step-by-step process that gets triggered the second that promise is broken.
So, let's start right at the beginning, the moment something goes wrong. The number one rule, the most important thing to get straight right away, is that this is not about finding someone to punish, it's about finding a problem to fix. This is a fact-finding mission, plain and simple, not a fault-finding one.
Now here's where it gets really interesting. For an investigator, there are two kinds of clues. First, you have the accident. That's when something actually happened causing real harm. But just as important, you have the near miss. That's that heart-stopping moment where things almost went terribly wrong, but somehow they didn't. Both of these are treated like gold. I mean, a near miss is basically a free lesson in what not to do, and you better believe it gets taken just as seriously as a full-blown accident.
The second an incident happens, bam! An invisible clock starts ticking. And believe me, what happens in these first few hours is absolutely critical. It sets the tone for everything that comes next. There's zero time to waste.
So before any real detective work can even start, two things have to happen, and they are completely non-negotiable. First, provide first aid. People always come first, period. At the same time, you've got to secure the scene, just like in a crime show. You do that to make sure nobody else gets hurt, and, just as importantly, to preserve all the evidence exactly as it is.
And that clock? Yeah, it's ticking fast. The very first deadline is just 1 hour. That's it. That's the maximum time you have to get a verbal report to the Health and Safety Department. This isn't about giving every single detail. It's all about speed. It's the alert that kicks the entire investigation process into high gear.
Okay, so after that first verbal alarm bell is rung, things get a bit more formal. Within 24 hours, an initial written report has to be in. This is the first official piece of paper in the case file, and it's meant to capture all the basic facts while they're still fresh in everyone's memory. So, the scene is secure, the first reports are filed, now it's time to assemble the team. And this isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. You have to build the right team for the right case, and it all depends on how serious the incident was. So, who actually gets that call? How do they decide who's on the investigation team?
Well, it scales up with the severity. So for something minor, like a small near miss, you're looking at the local HSE officer and the site supervisor. If it's a major injury or a crash, you're bringing in the managers. But for the most serious cases you can imagine, a fatality, a fire, an explosion, the investigation is led right from the top by executive management, and they'll almost always bring in an outside expert to get a completely unbiased view.
All right, the team's assembled. Now the real work begins. This is the part where they start digging, gathering all the facts and piecing together the whole story, trying to get from the what to the how.
And they use every tool in the toolbox. They'll interview witnesses, sure, but they know memory can be tricky. So they also photograph everything from every possible angle. They collect physical evidence, things like maintenance logs or damaged equipment, and of course, they pore over any CCTV footage they can find. Every little thing is another piece of the puzzle.
And here's the thing. All that evidence isn't just to figure out the immediate cause. The goal is to find the root cause. This is the real deep-down reason something happened. Think of it like this. The immediate cause is the brake failed, but the root cause might be the maintenance schedule was totally inadequate. You see, you have to fix the schedule, not just that one brake, if you really want to solve the problem.
And that brings us right back to this core idea. This quote really says it all. You're only going to have a successful investigation if you build a culture where people feel safe telling the truth, where they can explain what really happened without being afraid they'll be blamed. When people know the goal is to learn, not to punish, you get the honesty you need to find that root cause.
So how do they get to that root cause? They use this simple but incredibly powerful technique. It all starts with one little question. But why? And they don't just ask it once. They keep asking, over and over. It's called the 5 whys method. For example, why did the machine break? Because a part failed. Okay, but why did the part fail? Because it wasn't lubricated.
But why wasn't it lubricated? Because it wasn't on the maintenance checklist. See? That is your root cause. You just keep peeling back the layers of the onion until you find the real problem at the core.
Finding that root cause is a huge breakthrough, but the job is far from over. In fact, now comes the most important part of all, making absolutely sure this can never, ever happen again. This is where we shift from investigating the past to fixing the future. And that fix comes in the form of something called a CAPA. That stands for corrective and preventive action. The corrective part is the immediate fix, replacing the broken part. It treats the symptom. But the preventive part is the big one. That's the system-wide fix that tackles the root cause, like updating the maintenance schedule on all similar machines so that this problem is literally designed out of the system for good. Of course, not all fixes are created equal. They have to be prioritized based on risk. If you find a critical risk, something that could kill someone, that demands a fix in 24 to 72 hours, no exceptions. But a lower risk issue might be given 30 days. It's just a smart, practical way to throw your resources at the biggest dangers first.
And getting to fixed isn't just a handshake agreement. It's a formal, tracked process. You can see here, within a few days, a CAPA is assigned with a clear owner and a deadline. Then there's time to implement it. But here's the crucial part. It doesn't end there. Later on, maybe 30 days out, a review is done to make sure the solution actually worked in the real world. Only then, after it's been verified, is the case officially closed.
The final chapter of any good investigation is to share what was learned. This is so important. This is where one team's hard lesson becomes everyone's protection. The findings get discussed in meetings, sent out in bulletins, built into new training programs, and even used to update the entire company's policies. You take the knowledge from one single incident and use it to make the whole system stronger. So when you really think about it, closing a case isn't an ending at all. It's actually a beginning. Every solved case, every new fix, makes the entire safety system just a little bit smarter, a little bit stronger, and a little more resilient. It's a constant cycle of improvement, all driven by learning from what went wrong. Which really leaves us with one final thought. Is an incident a period at the end of a sentence, a total failure? Or is it more like a comma, a pause that forces you to reflect, learn, and then continue writing a much safer story for everybody involved?